So the interesting thing that it leads my brain to is, okay, is second half of 2021. So then, do the contracted rates lose a significant portion of the ground that they gained this year?
They would probably have to, but I know someone else that we can ask that question. That's a great opening question
There
for
you
Chris
go.
Seeds, who's a sales director over at Bridge Logistics. How are you doing today, Chris?
Good. It's a pleasure, fellas.
Hey, Chris,
Great.
nice to see you.
Yeah, let us know a little bit about Bridge Logistics and what your take on the freight market is right now.
Yeah, sure. Bridge Logistics. We're a third-party, family-owned 3PL here, based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. We've been around for about 14 years. We specialize in truckload freight here domestically, predominantly in the Midwest. But we really like partnering with shippers and helping them get a better understanding of, not just what's going on in the market and how we can impact each other together, but how this industry is adjusting and changing and how we can change together.
Good stuff. So, Chris, we were just speaking with Kyle Lintner from of K Ratio, and looking at the dynamics between spot rates and contract rates, and contract rates have caught and are above spot rates, right? And what that does to it. Are you seeing any of that? And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first of all, Kyle's a hard act to follow, so I'll do my best here. But I think he hit the nail on the head for the most part. There's one thing about this, the market as a whole here in logistics, and that's what really makes this job fun, is that there's always going to be a huge amount of volatility. How much volatility? That just depends on what's going on in the economy and what kind of pandemic's hitting at this time, or what kind of recovery stage we're in. So I definitely see the trend. I think that you're seeing more and more freight being accepted by contracted carriers, because more shippers are willing to pay that higher rate because they want the stability. I think that shippers are they don't want a repeat of what happened at the end of the year last year, so they're willing to accept those higher rates. Now, how long is that going to last? I think you're going to have a season of several mini bids that transpire, and kind of what Kyle was saying earlier is, that second half of the year, or maybe the third quarter, starting the third quarter, who knows what that environment looks like as we transition from a season of buying goods to being able to spend money on services. But at the end of the day, I think that you have consumers that have been receiving stimulus checks have a decent amount of savings built up. I think that there's a significant level of stickiness amongst several industries, especially the grocery industry, as Andrew Cox was mentioning earlier, and they're going to continue to buy differently than they did pre-pandemic. And I think that hopefully the new administration can get some sort of infrastructure figured out, and there'll be a lot of spending there, which will cause a lot of movement within the industry. I think that housing, new permits which are high right now, are going to show up in the latter half of the year as these homes get finished, and they need to be filled with appliances and anything else you would need to furnish a home with. And I think with all these things combined, I think you're just going to see an enormous amount of demand consistent, and I think it's going to move. Even if the consumer demand resides, I think that you're going to still have a number of factors that play into goods needing to be moved across the country.
So Chris, we mentioned Kyle's weekly update that he does on LinkedIn. You have your own show and your weekly updates that you do. What not to miss with Chris. This latest episode, what were your main points that you want everyone out there, shippers, everyone in the market to know about?
Yeah, and the reason I make that video in the first place is to educate customers and anybody in the industry that wants a better understanding of what's going on right now, and how what's transpiring now is going to impact the future in the logistics industry. But I would say right now, the inventory levels that we're seeing, the low level of inventories we're seeing right now, and the pull forward that's happening in order to get those inventories back to where they need to be, whether that's a shift from a just-in-time mentality to a just-in-case mentality, because nobody wants to be, no importer wants to be in the situation they were in the beginning of the year, and how that's affecting transportation domestically, to the backup that we saw at the ports, and how that's affected and is going to affect the remainder of the year. You have, I think I touched on it in my last What Not to Miss with Chris, and it was around Chinese New Year blank sailings. I think you were only going to see 2% of sailings as opposed to 20% of sailings, and that's huge just to get caught up on their end because of all the factors that are affecting Asian manufacturers and container shortages on their side. So there's just a number of different things going on right now, and I tried to keep those videos to a couple of minutes. But if you noticed on this last one, I think I went close to 15 minutes long, just because there's so much going on. It's crazy time to be in this industry. It's exciting, and we love educating customers, prospects, anybody, carriers, that's willing to listen to what we have to say. And it's just a really fun time to be here.
It's interesting you're talking about stocking and restocking inventory levels, and it kind of goes into the theme that we're always talking about going into 2021. It kind of reminds me of a situation we might face early in 2019, with all the pull forward demand from tariffs coming in 2018, and a severe overhang and overstocking, right? What do you think the risk is for building up those inventories too far and having maybe some of that mix of spending from tangible goods to services, and all of those factors kind of coming together in another perfect storm?
Well, I think that the landscape is a little bit different than it was back then. I think that this year has proven that movements of supply chain for importers and manufacturers is incredibly difficult. So as much as you want to move away from manufacturing in China, it's very challenging, and it takes years and years and years to establish other lines of supply chain that can maintain certain shippers' level of growth and demand. So I think that this pull forward is to avoid any type of pandemic-like situation we experienced before in the past, and nobody wants to be undersupplied. They want to have that product on hand just in case, even if that means paying more for warehousing and really just a doomsday type mentality. So I think it's a little bit different landscape than it was back in 2019. So I think that I don't think you're going to see that type of history repeat itself, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think you're right, Chris, and to just hit on that a little bit more, I agree with what you're saying there to a certain degree. And the other part, Kevin, that I would just put on top of that is the environment that's driving the demand and the consumer spending is a little bit more sure-footed, unfortunately, than it was than the reasons for that overstocking, et cetera, that happened 2018 into 2019, right? We do have the vaccine coming out, but we have new strains of the virus coming out, unfortunately, and even if everything goes great, the majority of the people who are going to be running around traveling and stuff aren't getting this vaccine until August.
No,
So-
I agree. I can see those dynamics coming together. I don't know if they'll come together and we'll have this huge overhang or not, but it's
Yeah.
something to consider, certainly. Yeah.
It's definitely
absolutely.
something to keep an eye on. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. And, that's one thing, give it a shout out to Sonar here. That's one thing that, Sonar lets us be able to do and be able to forecast and educate our customers and keep them in the loop about trends that we're seeing and, how to react accordingly to those shifts and if they're going to happen or not. So, Kevin, great point. Good thing to keep an eye on. And luckily, Sonar lets us do that.
That sounds perfect, Chris. Thank you so much for your time today. What day of the week do you usually publish What Not to Miss with Chris?
I try to put it out on Mondays. I depending upon my schedule during the week, that can be harder to do than other times. But usually Friday or Monday is when I put it out on LinkedIn.
And you can just find Chris Seeds on LinkedIn. Probably the best way, right?
Yep. And if you want to know
perfect.
more about Bridge Logistics and what we do here, bridgelogisticsinc.com, or you can reach out to me directly, cseeds@bridgelogisticsinc.com.
Thank you very much, Chris. Always a pleasure having you on the show, and we will see you next time.
See you, fellas.
Thanks, Chris. Interesting conversation. We could go on forever on that, but we're just going to have to live life and find out what actually happens.
Oh, we will, but I always love these heavy episodes of domestic truckload freight. Right? It's just a great market. It's very volatile. It's always entertaining. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a not so good way, but it's always entertaining.